Gunner states, I'd like to mount a Hollow Sun 407K to my Glock 43X. Now, this combination of slide and optic creates a little bit of a problem. There are companies who make adapter plates that give you a solid mounting interface, but a lot of people don't like an extra mounting connection in between their slide and their optic. And this customer is one of those people, just wants it directly mounted. Now, in order to mount the Hollow Sun 407K to a Glock 43X slide directly, we have to modify it just a bit. So the first thing we have to do is grind off the rear plate lugs and then just slightly shorten and modify the front ones. This is a job that we've done many times here in shop and pretty comfortable at knocking out this work pretty quickly. So we should see a follow-up to this very soon. Gunner states, I want to mount a Hollow Sun 407K to my Glock 43X slide. This is part 2 to this job. So in order to direct mount a Hollow Sun 407K to a Glock 43X, it is required that we grind off the rear studs on the mounting interface, as well as reduce the height on the front studs to get the 407K to fit directly. As you can see here, we did grind them completely flush in the rear and just reduce them by about half the height in the front. And now that Hollow Sun optic will fit nice and snug in there very solidly. Once we lock down the mounting screws with a little blue Loctite, this should be ready to rock and ready to go for carry. Gunner states, I want night sights installed on my H&K P2000, as well as a short reset trigger kit. Now, this is a Heckler & Koch P2000 40 caliber. These guns were a mid-model between the USPs and the newer P30s, and saw a lot of law enforcement issue use, especially in the federal government, and have since been kind of retired, but extremely good, durable, reliable guns. But they did have double action triggers on the heavy side with long resets. So this customer wants us to upgrade their reset system with a gray gun short reset trigger pack, as well as a sight upgrade with Trijicon HD night sights. HKs have a moderate tightness dovetail, so albeit you don't need a professional sight pusher to put these in, you do need somebody who has a little bit of knowledge base and experience in putting them in without damaging them. So we should see a follow-up to this very soon. Gunner states, my Smith & Wesson M&P is having failures to fire. Now, this is an M&P 9 2.0, the newer version. And this customer states that when he goes to the range, he loads it all up, chambers the round, and upon trigger pull, it does not fire reliably on every round. So firing pin drops with no primer ignition. So first thing we're going to do is look over it externally, make sure there's nothing obvious that we can see that would be interfering with the function of the gun, including firing pin obstruction. But on this one, everything looks good. So next steps with this one is going back to the gunsmiths for a full breakdown evaluation, as well as a test fire, because this problem very well could be caused by ammunition. So we might put a different variety of ammo through it to see if maybe that is the culprit. Gunner states, I want a restorative refinish to my Star PD pistol. Now, these Star pistols are Spanish made and were not uncommon in the States and still aren't uncommon in the States, although the company is out of business and can be difficult to find parts for. Now, this customer just wants us to refinish it as close as we can to factory, but there is a couple unique issues with that. This does have a carbon steel slide with an aluminum frame. The corrosive salts used in bluing will disintegrate aluminum. So instead of doing an anodization like it was originally, we will be Cerakoting it, probably Elite Midnight color, which does give a very close to blue finish. Then we'll do traditional bluing to the slide, and we should get very close to how this gun looked out of the factory. Gunner states, my bolt action 410 is not feeding correctly. This is an older Stevens Model 59B bolt action 410 shotgun, and the customer states that as he shoots and cycles the bolt, the next round in the magazine is not feeding correctly. Now, what we found with initial visual inspection is that the external magazine tube is pretty mangled. Now, this is a problem because as he's shooting, it's not holding the internal magazine tube in. So this is going to go back to the gunsmiths, and we're going to check and see if this has any replacement parts available, or if they can rebuild the retention part of the external tubes to hold the internal tube in to allow proper feeding. Gunner states, I lent my Winchester 1200 shotgun to a buddy and it came back completely broken. Now, this is the follow-up to a previous video. If you haven't seen it, go back and check it out. But this customer lent his gun to a buddy for hunting and came back with a completely mangled ejector, as well as a loose ejector retainer pin. And so we completely took this gun apart, made sure there was no other issues, and there wasn't, thankfully. So we ordered a new ejector piece into the shotgun. The original retainer pin was still good. So we installed the good part, put it back together, and this gun is ready to get back out to the hunting field. Gunner states, the trigger on my 38 revolver is not working right. This is a Charter Arms Undercover 38 revolver. It's a 5-shot. Now, this is having a little bit of a unique issue. On initial evaluation, we do get to see the trigger hammer disconnection issues. And essentially, when you pull the trigger in double action, it is not sending the hammer back. So, like most revolvers, most of the internals are enclosed and unable to see. So, we're going to have to tear this sucker apart and see if we can figure out what is causing this issue. Gunner states, I want a stock adapter on my laminate Ruger Charger. This is the stock chassis for a laminate Ruger Charger 22. And this customer wants the laminate wood machined out for the stock/brace adapter that we make here in-house at Copper Custom. This is a job that we do on the regular. So this is going to go back to the Bridgeport and we're going to start the machine op to machine this pocket in order to fit this Ruger Charger adapter. After that, the customer can mount any brace or stock that he wants to this gun. Gunner states, the handguard on my Browning shotgun split in two. Now, this is a very rare and unique Browning recoilless 12 gauge. This gun is designed to actually have a barrel that is under spring tension that actually pushes mass forward as the gun recoils back so that they cancel each other out. Very unique design, very cool gun. But that system does use pressure on the handguard to engage that recoilless barrel system. So over time, that tension has caused this handguard to split in multiple places, including straight down the center. So this customer needs a replacement ordered, installed, fit correctly, and possibly even the finish touched up to match the stock the best we can. So next thing, we need to order the part, which is already confirmed to be available, and we wait for it to come in. Gunner states, I have an old shot load stuck in my black powder rifle. Now, this is the old black powder rifle. If you haven't seen the first part of this, go back and check it out. But somebody left a powder and ball load in this gun for who knows how many years, and we are tasked to get it out. Now, we ordered new ball puller, tried to pull it out from the muzzle end with massive failure. We could not get it out. The projectile was actually put in backwards, which did hinder us from getting it out with the traditional ball puller. So we looked up another unique method on how to get this out, and we actually gave it a try. So what we did was actually hook up a electric grease gun to the threads of the nipple and used grease hydraulic pressure to push it out the front. Surprisingly, it worked. So we got this out clean without any damage and replaced the nipple. Next up, treat some of the surface rust, and this one goes back out to the customer. Gunner states, my Lyman black powder rifle accumulated a ton of surface rust. Now, this Lyman black powder rifle looks like it was exposed to direct moisture and got heavy rust and pitting on the blued metal. This original bluing would have been slightly polished and been very beautiful. But this time around, we're going to do a little bit more durable combo of parkerization and bluing in more of a matte finish, a little bit more protection on the gun. So first things first, we're going to disassemble this to protect this beautifully finished stock so that we can start with a heavy bead blast on the steel, and then we can get it in the blue tanks. Gunner states, I want an upgraded trigger and fresh night sights on my H&K P2000. Now, this is part 2 of this job. So if you haven't seen part 1, go back and check it out. This one's going to be fairly straightforward. We installed the Gray Gun short reset trigger kit in this H&K, as well as Trijicon HD night sights. These sights have 3-dot tritium, with the front sight being a HD orange front painted sight, and the rear sight also has serrations to cut down reflection. Now, the Gray Gun's trigger kit does help smooth out the trigger, but mostly helps shorten the distance of reset on this, which the HK P2000 does have a long resetting trigger from the factory. So this is a good upgrade. Now, this customer has a freshened up version of an otherwise fairly old gun, but from experience, this gun is extremely reliable and is a great carry option for anybody who chooses it. Gunner states, my bolt action shotgun is malfunctioning because of a mangled mag tube. Now, this is the Stevens 59B. This is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, go check it out. The issue with this gun is that the retention portion of the mag tube was all mangled up and it wasn't holding the mag tube in correctly. So when the customer was shooting, it was causing malfunctions. Now, we went in and we reshaped the retention portion of the magazine tube. We re-adhered the mag tube collar, and most importantly to this job, we put a brand new stake pin into the mag tube itself so that it can hold in tight. So now it goes in and out freely and easily, and gun functions just fine. So back out to the customer. Gunner states, I'm having a ton of malfunctions with my 9mm AR. Now this is a Freedom Ordnance FX9. It is a Glock mag compatible 9mm braced pistol. And this customer states that he's having feeding malfunctions, both with the round nose diving and going up above the chamber upon cycling. Now, first things first, we're going to do a initial visual inspection. Everything seems to be functioning and manually cycling just fine. Now the gun did come in pretty dirty, so this gun perhaps just needs a very good thorough cleaning. So we will take it back to the gunsmiths, break it down, and see if there is an underlying cause or we just need a good cleaning. Gunner states, I'm having malfunctions and a dead trigger issue with my pistol. Now this is part 2 of this gun. This is Smith & Wesson M70 2.0, and this customer stated that they were having malfunctions as well as a dead trigger issue. So we took this in, couldn't find anything wrong with it on initial visual evaluation. Gunsmiths took it back, also couldn't find anything, so it went out for test fire to see if we could duplicate the issue. We ended up putting about 100 rounds through the gun and could not duplicate the problem. So this gun is going back to the customer with a couple notes to see if maybe it is some user error malfunctions or possibly just needs a simple lesson on the functionality of the firearm. Gunner states, the slide release on my pistol is not locking to the rear when I shoot the last round. Now this is a Canik TP9, and this is one of the fancier models that comes with all the bells and whistles. But when the customer shoots the last round in the magazine, the slide is not locking to the rear. In initial inspection, we can see that there is no spring tension on that slide release. So as the empty magazine gets put in, there is no upward pressure on the release to lock the slide to the rear. So just with simple evaluation here, taking the slide off, we see that the spring that is in fact supposed to do that is a little mangled up and not in the right position. So looks on this one that we're going to have to source a replacement spring and get it installed, and that should be what this gun needs. Gunner states, I want to mount a brace or stock to my Ruger Charger pistol with a laminate chassis. Now, this is a job that we do in-house at Copper Custom to fit our own Ruger Charger adapter piece. And so this customer sent in his laminate Charger chassis so that we could machine out the rear end so the adapter would fit in and he could mount any brace or stock that he wished. So as you can see, we CNC the rear out, has a perfect snug fit in, and allows the mounting screw to go through and lock down tight. So this thing's getting wrapped up, packed up, and shipped back out to the customer because he's not local, so it'll be coming back to him soon. Gunner states, my old 22 rifle is locked up. Now this is a Winchester Model 67 bolt action single shot rifle. Now, these were fairly common back in the day, and you still see them fairly often. This customer has an issue with the bolt action actually locking up. So he got it back from a friend, and at this point, the bolt did not come back to the rear properly, and also the cocking lever did not pull to the rear as well. So this customer brought it to us, and we need to evaluate and see what is going on internally to make this work correctly. Now the customer was also interested in getting this gun restored, at the very least a re-blue. So we're also going to get the customer a full quote on re-bluing and refinishing this gun so that he can pass it on to the next generation as a family heirloom. Gunner states, I want a binary trigger installed into my AR. Now today we have an Anderson manufacturing receiver that a customer brought in and wants a Franklin Armory binary trigger installed into the receiver. Now some customers might be confused about the legality of some of these triggers, and it is true there has been some that have been deemed illegal, but the Franklin Armory is ATF approved and legal to own and allows the rifle to be shot with 1 round on trigger pull and 1 round on trigger release. These are still deemed standard semi-automatics. So next step, tear the trigger control group out of the existing receiver and start dropping in the Franklin Armory binary. And lastly, we'll test function to make sure that both trigger pull and trigger release firing is functional. Gunner states, my Smith pistol is failing to fire. This is a older Smith 5906. These double action Smith & Wesson pistols have been discontinued for a while now. And this customer is stating that when he pulls the trigger, that the primer is failing to ignite. First things first, we're going to do a simple visual and a handling evaluation. Everything seems to be in place on this gun. Now it does have a mag disconnect safety, which means we have to have the magazine to mimic accurate function. So we're going to put that in. Everything seems to be okay. So this customer claims that when the hammer falls as he pulls the trigger, the primer is not igniting, and he has to cycle the safety in order to get the round to go off with the next trigger pull. So we're going to tear this thing apart, see if we can see anything obvious. If not, we're going to go to the range and try to duplicate his results. Gunner states, my Serbian pistol cannot be reassembled because the parts are all mangled. Now this is a Zastava M70 pistol. It's a Tokarev style pistol, and this customer is stating that the trigger mechanism, including the mainspring, cannot be reassembled on this pistol due to a mangled retainer pin. pin. So this customer brought this to us in parts. So there's not an evaluation on this pistol, just a directed job in trying to replace the retainer pin for the mainspring in order to position the trigger properly and make it function correctly. As you can see here, you can see the mangled retainer pin for the mainspring. It's all bent up and wiggly, and we need to either make or source a straight one and then reassemble and test fire.